Tonight on the Game On podcast, Adelaide Crows strike first and strike hard in this year's trade period. A young magpie wants to get to Port Adelaide. Do we think it will happen? Yes. And the Panthers are the NRL premiers for 2024. All right, let's do this. Welcome to the Game On podcast. My name's Pete once again. Malcolm is here with me in the studio. And, mate, some highlights from the weekend for you, mate. Being that it was a long weekend as well.
Yeah, I actually went to watch the Adelaide Strikers girls on Sunday, and it was a good game against Tasmania. And Amanda Wellington, 4 for 29 off 10 after Hollow made the 99. But, yeah, I'll go Amanda Wellington. Okay, it's something different.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go the AFLW. I think good to see Nord Oval being used, obviously, on a Friday night there during the school holiday period.
Yeah, and I want to give Barry Solomon and the Nord ground staff a huge tick there, and I probably hasn't got enough publicity. AFL do 50 tests on your ground. So after the grand final night, we had to have everything off the ground ready for the AFL the next morning. So the goal squares were dug out, nearly the centre half forward and various spots and all that, and the turf looked sensational. So to Barry to get up the turf in that regard from how bumpy it was and then towards the end, because of the amount of footy on it,
I was going to say,
to get it up. And it was in pristine nick. Was on the ground after the game, had a good look where it had been where the grass had been planted and all that, because he couldn't quite see it from the scoreboard and that. So I wanted to have a good look. And huge tick to the Nord ground staff.
Absolutely. A lot of footy obviously played from local grand finals right through to obviously Nord training right up until obviously grand final week. And then they got on the Adelaide Oval and probably gave the Oval a little bit of rest. But you're right. I was looking at that Oval and going, hey, that actually did come up. So I'm glad you pointed that one out. All right, mate, let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, coming up a little bit later, we're going to talk some basketball. We're going to talk some cricket, some updates. You've already given us a little bit of an update there. And obviously the AFLW. But to kick us off first, in the trade period in the AFL, we'll start with Port Adelaide. The trade of Houston seems likely to go ahead, but now Collingwood have entered the fray. What are your thoughts on that? And is Carlton sort of hamstrung by the Camperali brothers as part of this trade period?
I think they possibly are really there, and they've sort of made that commitment too. Whether that turns out to be a good commitment in a few years' time, we're going to have to wait and see. A little bit there. I've found it amusing reading it. People want just the best for their club and don't look at things with realism. And someone saying, we'll just swap him for Noble, and you're thinking, oh, for goodness sake, he's a dual All-Australian, you clowns.
Yep.
And, things like that. I think it's still likely to go ahead, but it'll be dog eat dog. It'll go down to the wire.
So in this case, I mean, even though Dan Houston sort of said, I want to get to Carlton, but is the preference to come back to Victoria or is it to go to a certain club?
Yeah,
because if it is to Carlton, then I reckon he stays at Port Adelaide next year. Or, this year coming. Or the next season.
I agree with you there.
Yep.
But I think he's desperate to get back to Victoria.
Right.
So I still think.
So does that mean North Melbourne is still in the
I would
the
say
frame?
so. And look, purely financially wise, North Melbourne's probably his biggest bickies. But if he wants to play in a premiership side, either Collingwood or Carlton are obviously a bigger thing there. So
Carlton's probably a little more in the window than what
Yeah,
Collingwood
I think
are
they are.
on the
I think
age
they are.
factor for
Yes.
Collingwood. That's probably my argument there.
Yeah. So we'll wait and see. But there'd be plenty of toing and froing behind the scenes.
Yep.
These sort of things can change pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it also depends on obviously what clubs have got worked out, academy points, what they've
Joe
banked.
Richardson asked, wanting to go to Port. That probably helps Collingwood's chances.
Yep.
So, there's lots of things still to go into the wood. You've got Gold Coast. Now, I think 6 is overs for Rioli and they're going to probably do that.
Yep.
And then surely they won't do 13 for Noble. Like Noble's a good player, don't get me wrong, but hang on, this is meant to be this superstar draft, and I think it is so desperate. They haven't played finals yet, just desperate. Oh shit, we need some ready-made players, and I'm not convinced it's a great decision.
Could
for
work
them,
against them. You did talk about Joe Richards there. Obviously, he has requested a trade to Port Adelaide. Was that a surprise for you? Because it was for me.
No, because the word was around that Port had offered him one more year.
Right.
Now, I'm sorry, if any of us are offered an extra 300, I'd say granted our job. Guess what? Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other little tidbits, I suppose, from Port Adelaide? Lukosius is probably the big one. Does that deal get done, or is it a case of the domino has to fall for Houston first before
No, I
Lukosius?
think it'll still end up happening. Because Gold Coast want that wages off their books. So I think it'll happen for a future. Yep. Whether it's a future first or a future second is probably the thing being debated behind the scenes at the moment.
Now, we'll stick with Port Adelaide. Do you see Lukosius taking Charlie's spot, obviously, in that forward line?
Well, that's the word. I don't think that's his best position.
No, I agree. That's why I
think his best position is the roaming position, and to use his elite foot skills. So I don't think that's his best. The word is saying that he wants to play full forward. I don't quite get that. If that's correct, who's to say that is totally correct?
Yep.
And we'll have to wait and see till next year when it happens. But I'm not sure Georgiadis, Marshall, Lukosius is
the right mix.
Well, they're all pretty athletic, but there's not really a power body amongst the three.
Georgiadis could be that.
Yeah, he
could put some bulk on.
Yeah. He's. I think he's he's probably the most developed player as a key forward out of the three. Because look, I still think Marshall's concussion issues is big as well.
That was going to be my next question: is that if Marshall doesn't play, well, then they're almost obliged to play him at full forward, aren't they? Or in the forward line.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference. Yeah. I'm a bit like you. I'd rather have him up on the wing or off that half back line, or roaming that almost Matty Robin role for Adelaide.
Exactly. I think similar players in that way.
Yeah. Very interesting. We'll keep a bit of an eye on that one. All right, let's move on to Adelaide. So far, Adelaide have probably got the A+ as far as their trade period goes. Alex Neil-Bullen, Isaac Cumming and James Peatling have all requested trades to the Crows. Obviously, Isaac Cumming as a free agent is probably something that Adelaide really haven't done for the last couple of years, have they?
Yeah, no, they needed to land either him or Perryman. And Port thought they had Perryman, and they've lost him to Collingwood in the 11th hour. So it's probably one there where Port are going to rue that as a miss. But then you don't know eventually that, therefore, their salary cap can be spread differently. So who knows what happens there in the future. They may get one where they wouldn't have been able to if Perryman was on the books. So we just got to wait and see there. But, it was important that Adelaide landed one. I think Neil-Bullen improves Adelaide. There's no doubt about that.
Now, this is what I was going to ask you, is that where do you see him fitting in best, but also for the betterment of the team? Because I see him as that roving forward, which then frees up Isaac to play in the centre. So
more midfield time. Yeah, no, I'm sure that's the position he's been earmarked for in that way. And look, the fact Adelaide have positioned with Lockie Murphy for so long, that's a major upgrade.
Yep. Before we move on from Port Adelaide and Adelaide, we're going to talk a little bit more about Adelaide in a second. But before we move on, obviously Club Best and Fairest were held. Port Adelaide's Zach Butters obviously taking out the what would it be, John Cale medal, I reckon.
Yes, just from Jason Horne-Francis,
which is where we sort of thought it was going to fall anyway. And then Adelaide, conversely, had first time in their history joint winners,
which I thought was a good result in the end. I thought it would have been Dawson just over Key, so they are. Out of that. So.
Now, Keys obviously recruited to Brisbane. Was sort of stuck in that line behind a few very, very good players at the time. Come to Adelaide, took a little while to find his feet, but now I think they found a bit of a role for him. Yeah,
also he's got his elite fitness level, so he's consistently running well over 15Ks each, which is pretty incredible that he's playing mainly as that roaming forward,
Yep.
but running so much. So
Yep.
his ability to get to a contest so often.
Well, that helps Adelaide defensively, doesn't
Yes,
it? Really, as far as him being
Yeah.
able to be that extra back if needed, and
I think
obviously extra forward.
him and Neil Bullen there does help Adelaide in that way. They're going to be better again defensively, which you need to be.
So where do you see Peatling fitting in? Obviously, he's come for more midfield minutes.
Oh
but,
yeah, he will.
But
He'll play more
midfield minutes.
Yeah, he certainly will in Adelaide. I think he's a pretty fair player. I think he's pretty handy.
And obviously Isaac Cummings probably the question mark a little bit because of injury.
Injury, yeah.
But if he gets himself right, where do we see him
wing
fitting
or
in?
half back? He's an elite kick,
Yep.
which Adelaide lack. That they really lack elite kicks.
So let's
probably
just
only
say
got Dawson in that way.
Yep.
So that does help.
Yep.
Big time.
Fogarty's pretty deadly. But,
Yeah, but that's more
but
upfield to have a shot.
Yep, exactly right. So then, where do you see Adelaide as far as their wings go? Because I thought Lockie Scholl was starting to show some promise. Me personally, I'd persist with him.
Yeah.
Who plays that other wing?
I think Cummings the other wing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. I'm glad we're on the same page as far as that goes.
Yep.
All right, now this has probably been the hot talking point for us, probably for the last 6 months, about Adelaide's recruiting team. Is it a pass mark for them in the recruiting department, or do they need to land at least one more player to have it a totally successful trade period?
I think the fact that 3 players have requested to go to Adelaide, yes, they didn't get Lukosius, but the fact 3 have come to Adelaide, that's probably Adelaide's best result for a long time in that regard. Yes, Dawson and Rankin, but 3 at once.
Yes, but they had to pay overs for Dawson and they had to pay overs for Rankin.
Yeah.
Here we've got somebody coming on a free agency and they've had to
that
pay
does
a small
bit for Peatling.
and a little bit for...
Neil Bullen as a draft choice 28, I think I would like to have been a bit less, but it's pretty reasonable. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Is there anyone sneaking around that might actually hit Adelaide's radar in the next few days?
I wouldn't think so, but you just never know if there's still so. Quite often a name comes up, no one's considered.
Well, Richards was a bit like that for me, knowing that, Collingwood still see him as a required player.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest surprise for me anyway. All right, well, we've talked about the Adelaide and Port Adelaide teams, but the silly season is upon us. Who's the big domino to fall? Is it Bailey Smith? Is it Dan Houston? Is it Clayton Oliver?
Probably those 2. Look, I still think Oliver will end up staying at Melbourne. I just don't think there's enough. I think there's too much money and then can't really get the years.
Yep.
Can't get the draft choices back. I can't see him landing Bailey and Oliver with whatever draft capital. But I know Geelong are the masters that are accomplishing things.
Yep.
But Oliver's really going to only be if Melbourne go, stuff it. This is too hard.
Yep.
And they're not indicating that yet. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I know we've moved on from Adelaide and Port Adelaide, but is this the kind of player that Adelaide could potentially pick up? Or is it a big risk that they're not willing to take?
I think it's such a big risk in terms of there's big question marks on him off field as well. And
well, they've finally got their draft capital in a reasonable spot to be able to attract a good player.
I think he's too big a risk for any club.
No, that's
personally
fair enough.
At the moment.
Well, we've seen that with a lot of footy clubs that they do stick with them when they need to, but with the Petrarca situation coming out a little bit last year, and that was quite dicey for 10 minutes, and then that all got sort of swept under the carpet, and no, we're all friends again.
Yeah, so you still wonder there. A lot of things that Melbourne are a worry in terms of, geez, you can't have this many things said, and you've got Bartlett, the past president, suing the club, and this and that. Well, we've had Peter Carey tonight talking about the strength of needing
a good
strong
solid
off ground, and there's big questions on Melbourne. And their president, the lady president, after the train wreck of an interview on SEN.
Yep.
I nearly had a prank driving. It was that bad.
Yep.
So there's lots of question marks.
It was on high rotation for a few days there.
Yeah.
It was.
Oh, you imagine they would have been loving it. They would have been punching the air in the background.
Yep.
Yeah.
Melbourne have had this sort of going on now for the last 3 or 4 years, and I think it's probably hurt them in more ways than one. And where does that leave Melbourne as far as we think they're going to bounce up the ladder a little bit with some healthy players, but this off-field stuff, and like you said, we did speak with Super earlier, Geelong are probably the model case of
Yeah.
if you get front of house right and back of house right, good things can happen.
Yeah, and Richmond with Barmy. We're getting Barmy in there just to keep Damien Hardwick. No, Damien, keep going. We back you in. We believe in you. Relax. Do the same thing. Not panic and chop and change.
It's amazing when you
Just,
get that little bit of self-belief, it can certainly change things.
So, yeah, look, I think if you have a look at, if in 5 years' time, Melbourne haven't at least contended for another flag in this group, you'd say, yes, I know they won that one premiership and probably still the best game any side's ever played ever.
Yes.
But
well, that one quarter was just unbelievable.
So you've got to say, with the players there, is it an underachieve? Maybe.
Yep. All right, let's move on. South Australian prospect sets the record straight after a report surfaced last week. We're talking about Sid Draper here and the fact that doesn't want to go to Adelaide.
Appalling by the reporter. Just, it was pathetic. Unfortunately, there's not enough. Media can say what you like, and I don't get it that there's a lack of accountability. And out of that, where's the whole pressure being put back on? Hey, where'd you come up with that one from, young fella?
Yep.
Hang on, come on.
Yeah,
I can't reveal my source.
Good old-fashioned journalism has sort of gone out the window a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I was just looking for a little bit of a grab on what had happened there, but you would think that Draper is obviously the Crows' number one pick. With all of these picks changing, Adelaide are going to slide back to about 6, maybe 7. Do we see this being a problem for the Crows?
I still think the only one there, they go back 1 because of the Brisbane, but we know that's Ashcroft. Now, he's not the equation. We know he's going to end up at so yes, it forces Adelaide back to 5, but at the moment, look, I still think Draper's a fair chance to be picked by West Coast before Adelaide. I certainly know that they were right in. He was being heavily considered by West Coast, so we just got to wait and see there. And that, so yeah,
scary thought that one that's right under their nose might actually get poached out.
But if you can't, that's so be it. But I just like with people saying, "Oh, how can you, geez, he didn't do that much in the national. He carried an injury, and he probably really shouldn't have played. He was South Australia's best player last year as a bottom major, and I've seen enough of him.
Yep. Yeah. All right, we did talk about Jack Lukosius a little bit with Port Adelaide, but we're going to touch base again. What do they have anything to trade Port Adelaide? That's just where I'm at with it.
Well, they're still waiting. They've got to get it approved by the AFL to do another future first. I don't reckon that's been passed yet, or it hasn't been publicised if it has.
Yep.
So that's probably up in the air
because they used their draft currency to get Jason Horne-Francis through the door. Yep.
So you've just got to wait and see what happens there.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Predictable, West Coast will get Richmond duo after the coach's appointment. What are your thoughts on the couple of recruits that are going to be traded from Richmond to West Coast?
Oh, I think it's also financially based. Young Graham, I've got to be honest, from the SANFL day I was at, I was pretty sure that he was going to end up at West Coast. So
you would have bet your last dollar on it?
Yeah, I would have been quite happily taken. I would have very happily taken odds.
Yep.
For the conversation at that day.
Yes.
Day and that. So, good luck to him in that way and that. And yeah, look, yeah, I know why there's a relationship with McWalter and the Richmond boys, but I think they're probably going to end up there anyway with just what they've been offered financially.
Now, before we move on with these trade period times and compensation picks, what are your thoughts on compensation pick? Because from the outside, it looks like a bit of a mess as far as how it goes. Is it a case of that the first round of the draft should not be compromised with these compensations?
I think it's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. Josh Battle, if I'm a St Kilda supporter and I'm going to get draft choice 8 for Josh Battle, I would have driven him to Hawthorn myself.
Yep.
Like
That's an IKEA start the car moment, isn't it?
Massively.
Yep.
He's a reasonable player, look, and all that. But, geez, you're a chance to draft a couple of superstar midfielders for that. Oh, yeah, that's, for me, is a huge win for St Kilda.
Yeah, absolutely. Who else can get involved, obviously, there with North Melbourne, West Coast, to make that?
Who knows? Who knows what North Melbourne and West Coast are offering, and then suddenly, if that did get changed, that changes everything.
Yep.
So we just got to wait and see.
Do we see that happening a little bit more towards the Tasmanian entry into the?
Yeah, I think more so than now. I wouldn't be giving away those choices now. I think that'd be crazy. Yep. So yeah,
it's going to be an interesting one. All right, mate, let's move on to the NRL. We don't normally have it this early in the show, but it was a historical grand final night, with the Penrith Panthers securing a 4th NRL premiership. It's clear to say it's a dynasty.
Oh, no doubt about that whatsoever. And yeah, controversial call. Everyone's still debating. I've heard both sides of the camp, and yeah. Oh, look.
So obviously they have video refereeing that potentially could have fixed this, but it was still in debate.
Still in debate. You know?
Yep.
I'm sorry. What's the old bit of umpire's decision? And we don't seem to be able to accept umpire's decision in sport anymore.
Is that because of the technology that's
available?
available?
I think it is.
So it's sort of
it's a domino. It's
a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I just think it goes overboard.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the NRL Grand Final? Because it was a bit of a tight tussle, but as far as a spectacle goes, it probably didn't live up to everything that everyone would have wanted.
It was more the workmanlike win. The side, they did what they had to do to get them over the line. It was more that side of things.
Yep.
I think the AFL would have been quite tickled pink that takes off a bit of meatloaf and the pressure there compared to what happened there. So there's that argument.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing on the NRL. Do we find it a little bit of a concern that the stadium wasn't completely filled for an NRL Grand Final?
Oh, I think it is a massive concern. It's, very surprising.
Is that a case of ticket pricing? Long weekend? Although it's traditionally on a long weekend,
well, surely a long weekend helps. Surely it means Melbourne Storm, you can go up as a Melbourne Storm supporter, drive back the next day, don't have to leave too early in the morning, that sort of thing. So I would have thought that would have helped.
Yep.
So,
that was going to be my next part, was because it was Melbourne. Do you think maybe that was part of the reason?
Yeah, but I think it's a real worry for their game, for rugby.
It's a big worry. All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break. Coming up, got the Adelaide 36ers open their account and open it in fine style. Yeah. And the AFLW, the Crows getting off to a pretty good start at Nord Oval and finishing it off. And Port Adelaide just getting over the line in the end against the West Coast Eagles over in Perth.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking to buy or sell your home anywhere in Adelaide, from the hills to the sea? Meet Gary KRIEVS, your dedicated local agent from OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. With unparalleled knowledge of Adelaide's housing market and a commitment to exceptional service, Gary ensures a smooth and stress-free experience for all your real estate needs. Trust the expert, trust Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. Your next dream home awaits. Contact Gary today on 0422 071 317 or on email garyk@ocre.com.au. And for more listings, please visit owenscasserly.com.au. Make it happen. All right, once again, we thank our sponsors for helping us out and bringing this episode to you in Gary KRIEVS at OUWENS CASSERLY Real Estate. And a little bit later on, we've got Roger Steen Crash Repairs.
Thank you to Gary.
And thank you to Gary and Craig.
Yep.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we move on. The Adelaide 36ers open up their account with a win on Thursday night against the South East Melbourne Phoenix by 10 points.
Yeah, they did what they had to in that game and got over the line, and it was
It was probably
exactly
good for them to
that.
be back
Yeah,
home too.
Yeah, just did that, did enough, because South Phoenix are on the bottom and convincingly on the bottom, by the way.
Yes.
And did what they had to do. And then I'd heard Justin Casey going, and Case, obviously the basketball man, hey, they've got to win that game because they won't beat Illawarra.
Yes.
And then they were down in the last quarter and then came back. And, huge win.
36ers obviously not getting off to the ideal start early on, but really coming back hard there. You're right. Huge win against Illawarra Hawks.
Yeah.
102-100. This week's games doesn't get any easier from here, and banking those 2 wins sort of puts them mid-table. But this week they play the Sydney Kings at home. I think that's probably a good thing.
Yeah. So Saturday night. So, and you expect that game now to be a sellout along that sides, and hopefully the Sixers Army get them across the line.
Absolutely. Does the coach breathe a little bit easier getting that monkey off his back of opening the account?
Oh, I would say so, just quietly.
Yep.
Yes.
Did see during the week that I think it was a press release or something had come out from Scotty Ninnis sort of saying that all is well, it's all been settled, everybody move on. So very, very interesting.
Yes, I take that with more than a grain of salt.
Yep.
Yes.
36ers play on Sunday against Melbourne United. Couple of tips there, mate, against Sydney and Melbourne. 1-1, 2-0, or 11-2?
No, at least 1-1.
I think 1-1 as well.
1-1 likely, but look, 2 would be great, but I'll go 1-1.
Yep. Adelaide have got all the talent to obviously go pretty well there, and best of luck to them this week in their games. All right, mate, let's move on to cricket. I've left a good chunk of time here for some cricket today. Mate, any updates that you've got coming up?
So in the South Australian game against New South Wales, Wales
in the Shield,
in the Shield game, New South Wales are 7 for 297 at stumps. They were 4 for 280 reasonably late in the day, and Lloyd Pope's taken the last 3 at stumps. So we go to stumps 7 for 297.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the game side of things, that for New South Wales today, and let's be honest, it's also the old line, when you're giving your baggy blue, you're giving a baggy green as well. Now, Sam Constas, there's always been huge raps on him as a junior.
And not a name that a lot of people would have heard of, apart from if you're a cricket nuffy.
Yep. Huge raps on him as an Australian under-19 player and all that. Now, he's made 152 today. And so there's another game next week. And if he gets another 100, who knows what will happen. No, Marcus Harris did get 100 for Victoria today. So that probably helps him, because Bancroft got out first ball of the game. Remarkably, Michael Nessa was on a hat-trick for the third ball of the Shield season for Queensland, but WA have steadied and have ended up. Every game has actually got reasonably similar scores at the end of the day.
Yep.
So New South Wales 7 for 297. Victoria 7 for 330 against Tasmania, with Marcus Harris and Peter Hanscom making hundreds. So Marcus Harris 143, Peter Hanscom 129 in that. And WA, after being 2 for none after 2 balls, so you're probably in a little bit of trouble.
A little bit, yeah.
You're probably not expecting batting number 4 to be walking out to face the third ball of the game.
No.
At stumps, they are 7 for 319. Sam Whiteman, I think he's the other dark horse.
Smokey?
He's made 102. No one to occupy the crease. Been pretty consistent now for a fair while. Josh Inglis came back and made 100. So there. So as I said, every game reasonably similarly placed at stumps.
Yep.
Female-wise,
just before we move on from that, it seems like we've got some good players in some good form scoring runs in the Shield season, which I don't think we've sort of seen early on in a Shield season for too long.
They're actually big scores for Shield games.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
So it's going to be interesting now to see another round to see what happens, because I don't think Steve Smith will open again. So that suddenly puts it there, and then it's either Marsh or Green. Green being injured at the moment as well probably
That's a
makes
question
that
mark.
a little bit easy, potentially
Yep.
easier there. So I think to play India, that will likely go back to Smith batting at 4.
Yep.
So out of there. Now the female wise, we're now 4 and zip.
I was going to ask about that. The South Australian women's team absolutely off to a flyer, and 4 zip.
And Tasmania, the defending champions. Now,
Now,
Fridays.
did they play them twice?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So
I'm glad you clarified that for me.
So on Friday, South Australia batted 300 odd. Tasmania were cruising. Heather Graham got out. She walked off the ground, Pete, and walked in the room and slammed the door and may have kicked the ground and did her foot.
Oh, no.
And so she's out for a fair while in this moon boot and all that. So
Ouch.
it's a fair effort that she's won the JT Goose Award this early in the year, effectively. And yes, let's just say that there may have been a fair bit of mirth and laughter amongst South Australians and weren't exactly shattered that she wasn't playing.
No, fair enough.
Well.
Maybe we should get a little trophy and award, and maybe at the end of the year have an award season. That might be a bit of fun there. But players that are losing their cool a little bit. We've seen it with tennis players smashing rackets and coming off second best. But player kicking, I've not heard of that for a long, long time.
So on Sunday to the for South Australia in terms of Holly Armitage. So she's come over from England. So she made 70 odd on Friday and 99 on Sunday. Got out in the last over for 99. Bridget Patterson with 88 with the two batters. South Australia there, 290. Now, 290 on Karen Rolton because the outfield is just so quick there.
Yep.
It's probably really 230 anywhere else. Mm-hmm. It's either, as soon as it beats you at cover, good luck.
Gone.
It's 4. It's 4. So there.
Are you surprised it's playing that well this early in the season?
Not really.
We haven't had massive amount of rain.
No, they do. Trent Kelly and all that. They do a great job down there on that. And look, the bowling there, I thought Gemma Barsby's captaincy was very good. And Amanda Jade Wellington was the gun with the 4 for 29, but they had to juggle it around because Courtney Neal had struggled a little bit in her first spell, and so then they went. So it was mix and match. Mm-hmm. But Bold Tasmania were out for 250 in the last over, so it was a reasonably comprehensive win in the end. And so South Australia at the moment, on top. Now we don't get to say that often.
Well, we've said that 3 times now. It's sort of becoming self-prophesizing.
No, as at October 8, we're still unbeaten now, and I'm very happy to say that as a South Australian cricket supporter because normally by October 8, no way in the world. So,
Who we got coming up as far as Shield cricket goes for the men's?
So, as I said, we're playing New South Wales this game.
Yes.
Of which Steve Smith, Stark, Hazelwood and Cummins all aren't playing.
Yep.
I think they're all going to play next
round. Yep.
So, out of that, let's go to upcoming. Yeah, I think it's still another.
Because we had that big break between that first opening one-dayer and then all of a sudden nothing for almost 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yeah, because now the female one-day season has a break for their 2020 side. So the T20 Spring Challenge is on now. So
it's all very, very
it's hard to keep up with, and I'm strong. So 13th of October is a one-dayer where Western Australia play Queensland.
Yep.
So I'm still trying to find.
That'll be this Sunday.
So 15. So we're strikers.
Sorry to ask you the tough question there, mate.
No, but I knew it wasn't in the next few days, but so 20 to 23rd of October we play Queensland in Queensland, so we play away. I knew we were away the first 2 games. That's at Allan Border field.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yes.
We remain on top.
Yeah.
Anything else? Local cricket would be getting underway this
weekend.
weekend.
Underway this weekend at both district level and at Adelaide turf level. So all kicks off this weekend.
Who's your early tips, mate? Just to keep the listeners engaged because we are going to talk about it a little bit more this season.
Kensington have recruited pretty well, and Jake Lehman's gone out to Kensington. Jake made 140 not out today in the state's second 11 game. So Kenzie and Alex Ross has come back from Sydney and that side of things. So, yeah, they're going to be harder. West Torrens and Glenelg are the two others. I know it's very easy to say, but they played off in 2 of the 3 grades last year.
Yep,
Yeah,
I think you're
last
right.
year.
Yeah, I think you are right. Yeah, I remember you talking about that. All right, mate. We'll touch base with you on cricket next week. Obviously, with the Premier League season starting here, and as you said, the turf season starting, we'll follow that a little bit more closely this year. It does seem like there's more information available. Last year we were struggling to get some of it. This year it seems like it's a bit more readily available. Even for me, that it's not I'm not a cricket nuffy. I'm able to find it this year, whereas last year I was struggling to find it.
Yeah, a little bit more out there.
Yeah, so really looking forward to that. All right, mate, let's move on to the AFLW. Adelaide win at Nord Oval in a very tight tussle against St Kilda, with some of the Crows' best standing up when it needed. And Ebony Marinoff seems to be having a pretty good season. Still getting plenty of the ball, but your assessment, obviously, from the scoreboard there in her delivery, that's probably
it was slightly better.
Good.
It was slightly better. Still calls for the ball when she shouldn't. There's still a fair bit of
see ball, chase
ball, get ball.
Yep.
Hasn't grown up and playing footy. There's still some stuff there.
Yes.
Look, it wasn't a great game, and Phil Harper upstairs after the game, it was right. We've done our presentation downstairs. It went to Henya Munyard. We've assessed that game. Now we move on to next week. And I did go up to Harps and say, geez, it's a bit long there, Phil. You could have shortened that by at least another 5 seconds. Mucking around. And so that showed straight away, right, bang, we're on to next week. And really just more the club showing they're aware of this block of games.
Well,
now,
they've got 3 games in 10 days.
It's quite crazy. So they wanted an extra round, but not lengthen the season. So that's the AFLW have done that. Why that's just not another weekend tacked on, I just don't get. It's not like, we're in cricket season now anyway. So
what's the difference?
I just don't get it. And I admit I was at the Arkabar on Saturday watching the Richmond-Collingwood game, more watching the weather come in and the thunder and lightning where the game stopped for 40 minutes was spectacular to watch.
Absolutely.
Oh, and it was very obvious at halftime. I've just gone to the guy I'm sitting with. I reckon they'll have a break now for lightning. He goes, do they do that? I said, they're going to do that in this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's stay with the AFLW before we talk about Adelaide and Port Adelaide specifically. But it sounds like from AFL House there could be a change in the timing of the season again.
Yeah.
We've talked about it almost ad nauseum at stages. What are your thoughts, mate? I know what you're going to say, but
I know what I think.
Where do you think?
I don't know what they're going to do now. Are they going to admit, well, we got it wrong? AFL aren't known for those words.
No.
So they're a bit like Fonzie out of Happy Days. Well, we were wrong. So I'm not sure.
I mean, we've made it known that we think that in the preseason as the
no-brainer.
entree to the main course would be perfect.
I know the weather and all that, but surely, yes, there's got to be a bit of flexibility there for the games, mainly at night, all that. I think it's a no-brainer, but let's just wait and see.
Do we see that maybe being involved with state league football where you could start your SANFL, your Waffles, your VFLs a couple of weeks earlier to complement these women's games? Or do they want them completely standalone?
I think if the AFL teams leave the SANFL would be incompetent not to jump all over an early start, where you can get publicity, where you can get a bit of oomph, where everyone's ready for footy in February. I think it's a no-brainer.
Well, and if it's going to be televised, well then, Fox can jump on, Channel 7 can jump on. I agree with you. But can they potentially team it up with AFLW?
I don't know. So they're saying that it could come in line with the AFL games and be played as curtain raisers. Yeah.
Is that why we're not getting a reserves comp just yet?
Oh, who knows? But it also, for mine, they've also got, while there's not a huge supporter base amongst it, you do hear the comment that people will like, right, it's only $15 to get in. So what are they going to do? They're going to do an AFL. If they're going to do an AFL, they're going to operate a spot where only you go in for that. There's a lots of things there as well. So
Yep.
I think just wait and see, mate.
So then for the sorry, we will move on in a second,
you're
but
right.
for the clubs that are sort of saying we want to double up our staff, obviously at one time, et cetera, wouldn't it be better to play it at the beginning of the season where you've got sort of people available during pre-season, whereas at the moment everyone's done from a lot of clubs from the AFL side of things, and they don't want to be continually coming back.
And I think it's in everything too. You've got to remember that people following footy, so many of those, your loyal club people, you're footied out by now.
Mm-hmm.
You've done so much involved. I want a break from footy. Mm-hmm. And again, I know it's said it last week, whatever, but you don't finish and
the main movie
meal,
before you watch
whatever,
it. Yep.
main meal, whatever, etc. It's just, it's ridiculous the way it's been done.
All right, we'll watch that one with interest. Yeah. We've obviously, as I said, we've made our thoughts known on it time and time again, but should be very interesting. All right, we did talk about Adelaide getting the job done against St Kilda, but Port Adelaide were impressive against West Coast, keeping their top 8 chances alive.
Yeah, because West Coast were up early and then Port convincingly came over them. So, a very good effort by Port.
Absolutely. I'm impressed with Port Adelaide losing their captain round 1 or round 2 with a pretty serious knee injury. And they've unearthed some, we know those junior girls, obviously, through the SANFLW a little bit, but they've unearthed those girls and really let them go, and they're actually showing some real promise.
Yeah.
Rising Star nomination, I think, last week.
Yeah, with Molly Brooksby.
Yep.
Yeah, obviously a Nord girl, so have watched her a bit. Yeah, she's a fair bit of ability, and, if they add Indy Rashid to the roster this time, so all of a sudden,
Port are going to be
don't worry, they're going to be
serious
around the
threat
mark for a while.
All right, let's go through some of the results. Last Tuesday, the Dockers getting up over the Cats by 18 points. Hawthorn getting the job done against the Suns by 13 points. In probably one of the games of the round, Essendon got the job done against Sydney by 3 points. That was pretty tight going. Melbourne obviously getting the job done against the Giants. We didn't do too well in our tips, mate. I haven't double-checked, but it was always a bit of fun there. Right. Adelaide getting up by 4, and Chelsea Randall was probably the mainstay in holding off St Kilda when they were coming late. North Melbourne just seemed to be going from strength to strength, and at the moment I'd have to say that they're probably Premiership favourites.
Well and truly, I saw a bit of that game, and I know Western Bulldogs, are struggling, and that's putting it mildly. But, geez, North Melbourne were reasonably impressive as well.
Absolutely, winning by 55 points, North Melbourne. Richmond getting up by 36 over Collingwood in a bit of a traditional rivals clash, I suppose. Put Adelaide by 13.
Richmond are reasonably impressive. I think they're the dark horse at the moment.
Yep.
Because they've got a bit of top-end talent with Conte and Brennan. So, they're smoky.
Okay, well, we'll keep that one on pause, and we might play that one as the final sort of roll around. Port Adelaide getting up by 13 points. I think Daisy Pearce has done a really good job with West Coast, considering they've only just come into the competition. Yep. The Lions absolutely mauled the Blues by 55 points. Not good reading from a Carlton supporter's point of view, but Brisbane, once again, I think they're up there as far as Premiership favourites as well. Essendon getting up by 9 over the Suns. I think from memory, Essendon actually won all 3 of their games in this 10-day period. Which is pretty impressive when you think about it. Geelong getting up over Sydney by 3 points. Just going back over that, I reckon Sydney got done by 3 points against Essendon and got done by 3 points against Geelong. So for them, they don't want to be anywhere near 3 points at the moment. And to finish us off, obviously, Hawthorn getting up by 9 points. All right, let's go through some tips very, very quickly for round number 6. Who we got first up? St Kilda v the Giants.
Yeah, I'll go St Kilda to win. 7 goals, 7, 49 versus GWS 2-3, 15. I'll go for that one, mate.
I reckon because that game's already been played, you might have already got the chocolates on that one.
Jeez, what a good tip, Stag.
Yeah, it was a very good tip. Very accurate. Nostradamus, here we come. Hopefully the end of the world doesn't come sooner rather than later. All right, tomorrow night, Adelaide playing Melbourne at the Nord Oval, which I'm sure you're going to be at the home of football there.
Yes, I'll be on the scoreboard. Yep, Adelaide.
Adelaide for me. Port Adelaide v Collingwood.
Port Adelaide.
Port Adelaide at Alberton there. big night, a big week for South Australian, both Nord Oval and Alberton being used.
Yep.
Obviously, school holiday time, so trying to cash in a little bit on that. The Bulldogs v Essendon. Essendon for me. Hawthorn v the West Coast Eagles.
Hawthorn.
Richmond v the Cats.
Richmond
for me. The Lions v the Suns.
Lions.
That's going to be a good Q clash, that one up there, but Lions for me. The Dockers v the Blues. Dockers for me. North Melbourne v Sydney. Roos for me there. St Kilda v Melbourne.
St Kilda.
And the Giants v Adelaide to finish off these 10-game stretches. Adelaide for me as well. All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break. But coming up on Friday, Peter Carey, we've got on the screen here part 2, but it's actually part 1. And Greg Quinn, part 2. Really looking forward to hearing those guys talk.
Oh, look, Peter Carey was he was fantastic, wasn't he?
He was.
Really enjoyable.
Absolutely.
You're listening to the Game On Podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
A dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde, for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Flashbacks.
All right, now flashbacks today in lieu of our special guest that was on a little bit earlier. We're going to talk about footballing dynasties over the next couple of weeks with some of our flashbacks, but we thought it was only appropriate that we play the 1985 and 1986 Glenelg Premierships. They're back-to-back.
Yep.
Really looking forward to that.
In honour of Super.
Absolutely. All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
1985 Grand Final. A packed house, 50,000 people plus. A perfect day for football. Henwood in there against Redden. The umpire has picked up a free kick immediately. And it's the Bays, I think, to go into attack through Stringer. Kernahan 4 against Weldy 23. Good tap down to McDermott. Allen Stringer. Maynard. Simons wants it, but it's going in towards Gardon. Big fella up. Simons going to get the crumbs. Ducks one tackle. Slipped it out. Coughing ought to be a goal. Open goal coming up. Fine shot. Beautiful handball. Coffing's first. Robertson. Oh, he's made a mess of this. He's down in trouble again. Tunnel balls it out. But it was straight back to Doothy. Seabohm. The double play. Back to Doothy. Now Maynard. And he puts it up for McGuinness centre field.
He's recovered from that injury, McGuinness. Here's a go. Tony Hall's under the ball. And he's got it at left half forward flank. North Adelaide had the chance, but it's gone straight back the other end. Maynard plays on, straight through the centre. First goal to Maynard with his 11th kick.
One of the best kicks in South Australia. The agony of coaching. David Marshall, 182 senior games towards the lake end. Nice looking drop punt, going to struggle for distance. Right on the line, it could be touched. Good in! Oh, what a goal! If it'll be, that is, what a mark. Big pack in the square. Let's have a look at it again. How did he ever mark that? Surrounded by North. Henwood happy. Peter Carey, over 300 games. The only player in the side to have played in a previous premiership in 1973, in which stud
proud of all players.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, scooting into the extra time big finish. Let's start off with tennis. Alana Tomljanovic has broken back into the top 100 after her win in Hong Kong, and the first title since 2023. So I know she's had some injuries along the way. Certainly a really positive step there for Elena.
Yeah, no, great step in the right direction because it's really her injuries have held her back. You know, she may well be in the top 50 without those injuries by now. So hopefully it's a step in the right direction.
Absolutely. And then on the men's side of things, Alexei Popyrin into the Rolex Shanghai Masters of round 3. That was a few days ago. Again, another really, really good effort from an Australian that's had a pretty good 2024, really, hasn't he?
Pretty consistent season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Australians, we did sort of say last week that, you know, we've got 3 inside the top 50 at the moment, really pushing for that top 100 to try and get a couple more in there. And our man from South Australian, Lee, too, we're hoping that he gets another crack at it as well.
Just need someone to contend for a big title.
Yeah, and Alex Diminor is probably that little bit injury prone, but he does play like, you know, that Hewitt, that Courier, the Chang from back in the day there, that they just expel so much energy to stay in games. So really looking forward to that. But no, good luck to the Australians finishing out, obviously, the last part of the ATP WTA season. A lot of junior events going on at the moment. We might report on that a little bit more next week. All right, let's move on to motorsport, mate. The Bathurst 1000. We just touched on it a little bit last week, but really looking forward to that event. For you, is it a sort of number one ticket event? You know, you sit down and watch it, or is it a bit more in the background?
A bit more in the background, personally. You know, I admit it used to be Holden v Ford and Brock v Moffat.
Yep. Johnson.
I loved all that, but now for me, it's more in the background.
Fair call. Yep. Who's your sort of tip? Who you sort of thinking that might sort of get the job done there? Could go to anyone. Van Gisbergen's always around the mark. Yep. Staying with motorsport, the Australian Grand Prix ticket sales went on sale, but unfortunately, a global hiccup with the ticketing system meant that Australian fans have got to wait probably another day or maybe 2 longer.
Sick and tired of the ticket. So many ticketing dramas. There's ticketing dramas every year at AFL. It's press reprint, bang, bloody 3 hours trying to get through. You'd think by now we could have got the system more in tune.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on. SANFL, mate, we haven't talked about it, but we are going to talk about it now. I've left it specifically until this little period here. We could almost play the rulebook rant on this one, but we might hold off on it. But it seems that the SANFL agrees to Adelaide Football Club and Port Adelaide Football Club's request to changes to their list heading into next season. What are your thoughts, mate?
Look, I think it's still forgotten. So if Port lose the 14 grand and 17 grand final, those two by under a goal all up. So 1 point to Sturt and 3 points to Nord. Out of that, and then they were in a grand final against Glenelg as well. Now, if they've jagged the Premiership or 2 along that, we're not having this discussion. Adelaide make a prelim final, and Adelaide's decision to withdraw Pedlar before the game, which Nord, we were giving each other high fives.
Yep.
But out of that, and then Port, who rave on about trying to win premierships, when Lysett was their best player and came off to ready to play the AFL game the next week. So don't give us that.
Yep.
So I just think it's so far overboard. Like, I'm dark that Nord lost Logan Evans this year.
Yep.
Because who knows, if Logan had been playing, we might still be celebrating a Nord flag.
And the Eagles sort of lost young Welsh.
Yeah, so out of that, I don't get it, but I get the SANFL. They're in between a rock and a hard place.
Because they want to keep...
Oh, yes. And look, all the people the SANFL follow are saying, we're better off without him, get rid of him.
Financially, we're not.
Yeah, it's not only that. It's the day they leave, we're a day closer to it eventually becoming Div 1 community football. And that will happen eventually in terms of if they lose them. So you've got to keep them. So I get the SANFL in that regard, but I do agree with your point earlier about Kosh. The way he went off was really probably a bit like the St Kilda president this week, to make sure Battle gets the number. They get that. That's a bit of huff and puff. You know, so I take it with a grain of salt. They're desperate to leave. Like, you know, see 35,000 here in the grand final compared to what's in Melbourne. It's still the second best comp. So, yeah.
I don't understand why Port Adelaide is so hell-bent on it. Is it a case of that it goes back to those late 80s, early 90s roots of you screwed us over, so we're going to screw you over?
I think there's some pig-headedness about it and just people going on. And
I know a lot of people say that's in the past, it's in the past, but sometimes memories do last a long time, don't they?
Some of the absolute crap that they're claiming about Port's top-up players, well, hang on. You can still they actually get rewarded reasonably well financially. Yes, it's harder that they go to train and there may be only a few of them training together, and it's hard in that way and all that. But, geez, you know, the lack of pay at SANFL and the players you lose because of it, they're still not that bad off in top-up. So I just think it's a bit overboard.
We'll see how that one plays out. Anyway, all right, let's move on to a couple of loose questions to finish us off, mate. If you had top 5 sporting events that you'd want to buy tickets to, what's your top 5, mate?
South Australia Sheffield Shield final.
Oh, hello.
Shield.
That's a left field. I didn't expect that one to come out, but I like it.
No.
I like it.
It's a bit like Adam and Eve eating apples. We're waiting for South Australia to win another Shield.
Yep.
Oh, look.
Could happen.
An AFL Grand Final is still the one. While I'm not a huge racing fan, I still wouldn't mind to go to a Melbourne Cup. I can't deny that.
Yep.
Look, remembering the Helicon Formula One Grand Prix back here in the beginning.
Yes, 1985. I actually went to that, and I went to the last one in 91, I reckon it might have been.
Group of uni boys, we may have climbed up the back of a corporate box, got in the back way. 10 of us, we did not get asked one question for the day. And that's
so, you uni boys do all right. Passes into any final for 10 years, and
Danny Hansen, 3 votes.
There you go, and sneaking into the back of the court.
Oh, it was a good day. That
who you know, not what you know. What else would be on your list, mate? I've got a couple here. I've got AFL Grand Final, the Grand Prix, a bit like you back here. Maybe a tennis grand final, say, a Federer and Nadal, obviously. That's from yesteryear, I suppose.
But I know what you mean.
But, sort of that rivalry. Melbourne Cup for me. The Live Golf was probably one that sort of jumped out at me for something as well. And Gather Round, I think, is a unique, special event.
I love it. It's just even the atmosphere. As I said, so... For me, the group, I know I've mentioned them a couple of times before, the group of WA guys, 8 of them barracking for 8 different sides.
Yes.
And all that was huge.
Yep.
Yeah. And I loved the whole bit. And it's a different feel. It's a friendly feel. It's an excited, the buzz, it's just huge.
And because you've got so many supporters coming in from everywhere, everyone just appreciates the fact that they've got football on tap for basically 4 days.
It's just huge. No, I love it.
Obviously talking to some people from other sports, and they were saying that they can't believe how our fans sit together and get along so well. So what you bring up about it being a friendly event. Yeah. So for me, the Gather Round is probably one there. And
agreed.
I want to try and get to some more games this coming season. All right, mate, let's finish off with a couple of really quick questions. What are your thoughts on the King contract extension for St Kilda? What are your thoughts, mate?
I'm a huge King fan. Personally, I think he's St Kilda's most important player. For them to actually challenge for a flag, not just challenge trying to make the bottom end of the 8.
Yep.
They need him to come through. Now, I get it. You can question, why did you bother to do it now? You could have waited for another year or two, but camp there, negotiations there, they might have got him at a good price. I still think
he's in their best 22, but also
he's their key player,
moving them forward. Yeah.
Okay, they need him up, fit and going. And that's a real question mark, and I get that, but I understand why they've backed him in as well.
All right, let's talk about salary cap. For veterans or players that have been at one club for a certain period of time, should they be exempt from the salary cap?
not so much exempt, but a percentage like it was a few years ago. So you were encouraging, therefore, the Pendlebury for another year, that side of things, Hawkins for another year, and that. So, I like it personally. Taylor Walker for another year next year, potentially.
Would be good
in that way.
Hawthorn duo cancel an event last minute because of last minute sickness in inverted commas after the BNF night the night before.
Average.
That is pretty average, isn't it?
Yeah,
what are your thoughts, mate?
Piss weak.
Fair call.
Don't make the booking in the first place. Dumb by Hawthorn to schedule it.
Yep.
Dumb not to read the situation and go, hang on, these two next day?
Yep.
So diabolical by the players, diabolical by Hawthorn.
Yep.
Absolutely piss weak.
Not the greatest advertisement for the game. All right, mate. One last one on the AFL. Danaher obviously announced his retirement. We did sort of talk about it a little bit last week, but my big question is, who do they find to fill that role?
Yeah, I think now I don't think there's anyone at the moment. I think they should be going full bore in for Tom Lynch.
Yep.
I think he's the only one and out of that. But then who's to say medically whether he's out of that? So that's probably the one on the question mark fitness-wise. But at the moment, he's saying he's full bore and I'm in and all that. Well, I know if I'm Brisbane, I know that's what he's the guy I'd be looking at.
Well, he helps top them up, doesn't he?
Oh.
Yep. All right, and the last one for tonight, and we'll get everybody out of here on this one, is that the Socceroos, we could have brought this up a little bit earlier, the Socceroos are playing in Adelaide Thursday night, we'll obviously release this on Wednesday, but there's a real Adelaide player flavour about it.
Yeah, 7 in the squad. Craig Goodwin really pumping that up today, and I enjoyed that.
Yep.
Popovic first game in charge. So taking over from Arnold after Arnold had been there for 6 years, which is a huge time as Australian coach. So, look, all the best him and, go the Socceroos Thursday night.
Do we see them being a little more attacking? That's probably their one their one weakness at the moment. Their defence is holding steady.
Listening to Simon Hill, he did make that point that he thinks the squad picked it does have a bit more
flavour,
attacking flavour. Unfortunately, Lolongo's pulled out injured, which he thought that hurts them a little bit. But there's a couple others have been brought in, and he's the soccer guru.
Absolutely.
He's anticipating a more attacking flavour. So we can only hope.
Absolutely. All right, mate, we better wind things up there, mate. I thank you once again for your time.
Yep.
I thank our listeners. If you haven't done so far, like, rate and subscribe. I'm sure most of you have probably done that already, but please continue to do that and share that with friends, family, and enemies. Anybody that loves sport, we love talking about it. We love it each week. But as we do each week, we sign off with we promise to do better. And that's what we'll try and do next week. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Peter Carey. Thanks, folks.
And thank you, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.